Mr. Stanley, reel 2.
But apart from that one episode, things went absolutely according to plan. We laid out our panels, the right colors in the right place. There were 3 platoons in the company, and each platoon worked on the DZ allocated to it. I'm not exactly sure which zone we had. I think it was D4. And 2 hours later, the first glider started to arrive.
What did these panels look like exactly?
Cotton, colored cotton. You lay it out in a certain pattern, like a cross or triangle. It depends what you agree to lay out. And we also turned on the Eurekas. I hadn't mentioned Eurekas before. We passed from turning on panels. We also worked a radar set which receives from the aircraft a signal on a certain wavelength, and it sends it back on another wavelength. It's called the Rebecca. It gives the pilot normally a clear idea on what course he is and what he's heading for. So we turned on the Eurekas at the right time on the right code, and the gliders came along. There were only 1 or 2 accidents on the part of the gliders, and then they disembarked. They opened the back, and out came the jeeps and the guns, anti-tank guns, and they just set off, and we had to wait until they were out of the way.
How much material was unloaded in your particular spot?
I would say it must have been 50, 60 gliders.
Containing,
well, the men, first of all, the troops. They were called Horsa gliders, and each held about 20 men. Some had fewer men in jeeps, and some had 17-pounders. I think it's a dual-purpose gun. I'm not an artilleryman. With their ammunition, headquarters staff. All I can remember is they were, yes, light artillery, I would call it. Parachute artillery was the word, perhaps. My memory's not very good on that. But we lost 2 gliders. Yes, they didn't land properly. They buried themselves right in the ground, and I think there were 2 or 3 casualties straight away. But for such a large number of planes coming down, gliders coming down, it wasn't surprising. It was quite a good average anyway. We had expected it.
So the equipment was lost in those 2 gliders?
In those 2 gliders, yeah. Well, not all of it. I mean, the men were lost, but the equipment was probably intact. There were no fires. After all, a glider can't explode. It's got no engine. I think the equipment was retrieved, dug out, ammunition and all that. The men weren't all hurt, really. Some of us had sort of broken arms and that sort of thing, but it wasn't too bad. That's all I could see at the time. After all, it was a very small area. We were only concerned with our own area to bring our people, our gliders down and show them the way to the nearest road.
What was the terrain in this area? Was it
flat field. Fortunately, there were no dikes. Quite flat. Hardly any woods at all. Because the area had been chosen for that very reason. There shouldn't be any trees. Holland hasn't got a lot of forests anyway. That part of Holland was quite flat, absolutely suitable for an airborne landing.
Had all the crops been taken in? Were they just bare fields?
There were bare fields. The crop had been taken in, yeah. Can't remember any crops at all now. It seemed more like grassland out there.
So it wasn't heavy underfoot?
Not at all. It was dry. When you say heavy, do you mean heavy to walk around?
Muddy?
Not at all. It was a lovely clear day, very sunny. The weather was perfect at that point.
Was it cold?
No, not at all. It was same sort of temperature we had when we left England, I would say, in the upper 60s.
What happened next after the gliders had brought down the men and equipment?
I'm sorry, what sort of?
What happened next?
Oh, well, the gliders moved off to their destination, and we had to take up defensive positions because we had to bring down more gliders the next day. So whilst they moved off towards the objective, we dug in the area nearby and spent the night somehow in that area, waiting for daybreak and for the next lot to be brought down the same way.
And what happened in that drop?
The second drop.
Yes.
The second drop was quite different because the Germans had woken up and the Germans were staffing the area, and the Germans sent over some Messerschmitts as well into the little corps where we were stationed. We didn't lose anyone at all. It was surprising. I think I must have got the wrong range or something. But it was an opposed landing, and quite a few gliders caught fire in the air before they came down. Quite different from the first landing.
What time of day was this, approximately?
I think it was in the afternoon or the second day.
Were any of the German fighters hit?
Not to my knowledge. No, I think there were no nines, from what I remember. No. We were firing at them like mad, which, I mean, the Sten gun or a Bren gun is quite useless against a German fighter.
Was there any Allied fighter activity?
None at all. That really worried us because we thought the first time that they came along, they were our own fighters, and we started to wave at them. And when they fired at us, we realized they weren't ours, and they came back, and the second time, of course, we had taken cover already. We were expecting our Mustangs to come across from Holland, but then the weather wasn't good enough down there.
What kind of trenches had you dug?
Very shallow, about 18 inches. We had part of our equipment included an entrenching tool, which is a short 12-inch sort of shovel, which is a pickaxe one, and you open the soil. It was very hard indeed, because it's been very dry there. But they were only really meant trenches for immediate cover. We had not intended to spend the night there. I would say they were perhaps 12 inches by 6 foot, something like that.
What was the morale of the unit by this time?
We thought it was a lark. We thought it was great fun, but as we hadn't sort of found any Germans yet, we felt somewhat cheated because our mates had gone off to fight the Germans, and we were what we called miles behind the zone, potting about on the landing zone, on a dropping zone. We felt by the time we went into business ourselves, which happened after the second day. When it all came down, we just became ordinary airborne infantry, of course.
And what were you directed to do after the second drop?
Well, we marched towards the objective. We went along the railway, I should say, and took up positions in Osterberg. After all, the progress had not been as was expected. By rights, there shouldn't be anyone left. We were somewhat puzzled, so we were still playing about in the suburbs of Osterberg, whereas we should be almost within sight of Arnhem by then. So we weren't told what had gone wrong, but we knew something was a bit odd. We did not expect a job for another day anyway. There should be another job. But we weren't expected, we hadn't really expected to be used as infantry so many miles away from the bridge. All that mattered to us was the bridge. And at that time, we did not know it's only one of our battalions ever got through to the bridge. So we dug in, as they always seem to do, an infantry drill. You don't wait and look around you. So we dug in for the first night near some houses on the edge of a little wood. Now that part of Osterberg is the only part of Holland where they have forests. It was very pleasant. It was a holiday area. In fact, Osterberg is sort of a summer resort for the Dutch that we did not know. And I think we spent about 2 days in the wood. But as the ordinary soldier has not got much of a battle plan in his mind, we did not understand quite what was going on. The next day we went nearer the other end of the wood, and we saw the supply drops coming in, and at the same time we realized that every supply drop, the Germans were simply waiting for our Lancasters to come down as low as possible and shot them down. I think I must have seen at least 8 or 9 Lancasters being shot down in the air, just like flies, plucked out of the air, burning, coming down into that area where we've been waiting. It was terrible. I mean, I can't describe it to you now how we felt to see these boys being shot down. And one of them dropped out of the, managed to get out before it hit the ground with a parachute as opposed to static chutes which we used. The difference between the static chute and the parachute is one is a free parachute which opens by itself, and the static chute means as you leave the aircraft it pulls itself out automatically and you don't have to do anything at all. And the bag stays behind. The little bag containing the parachute stays on the plane, and as you pull the chute out it opens automatically. Now before we left Burford, I've given to one rear gunner a letter to my fiancée, and he said to me 2 days later, I saw him, he said, look, I'm afraid I haven't posted your letter yet. You better have it back and post it yourself when you get back. That was one of the same blokes who had the previous day brought us to Arnhem. So it was 3 days before. And that was the end of him. So these people were given rifles and just helped to man the line, the RAF personnel.
Were there any Dutch civilians about?
There were at that stage, yes, but we were pretty well out in the open. We didn't have much to do with the Dutch at that stage. Later on, I saw much more when we got into the town proper, into Oosterbeek. We had much more contact with the Dutch. But during the first 3 or 4 days, I saw a few, but we didn't really have much time to talk to them. They really got in our way. I don't mean unkindly. After we asked them to go into the cellar and wait.
So what happened next after the shooting?
Well, then we moved into Oosterbeek proper, and we were given 21 Company was given a certain area to hold in Oosterbeek. They're all houses, and each I had a house on the edge somewhere, which I was in charge of straight away. The Sergeant Major said, you look after this lot. And I had 2 glider pilots and 2 sergeants from another unit, and I as a private had 3 sergeants under my command. I thought it was very odd. However, we held the house for 4 days.
Against
the Germans.
Against what opposition?
Well, the Germans were sniping at us, the Germans machine gunning at us, and they were mortaring us all the time. But we held that line. 21 Company held a particular line, and the Germans could not advance on our sector. They broke through elsewhere, and the perimeter got smaller and smaller every day, because the Germans brought more and more reinforcements along, and we had to count our ammunition more every day, because we had we got a few odd containers, but most containers dropped in German lines. When I went out one day under cover with my section sergeant to bring a container in, when we opened the container, we found it had battle dresses and red berries in it. And he got wounded for that.
When the Germans first attacked you, in what kind of numbers did they seem to be?
No idea. It was certainly 3 to 1, as far as we knew. There was far more of them than we could have ever imagined. And they brought in self-propelled guns, which worried us quite a bit.
Several guns?
Self-propelled guns. We were told there were no tanks or any self-propelled guns in the area. We did not know then what we know now, that they had a tank lager up there, regrouping. But we dealt with some of them. My best friend knocked out a German self-propelled gun with his Piat, and he got killed 5 minutes later by a German sniper.
What were your total casualties?
Well, we were 200 when we set out. I should say our casualties were about 55%, which was quite good in relation to the rest. After all, 10,000 people set out without the Poles. The Poles came later. 10,000 set out and 2,000 came back. So we didn't do too badly.
What about supply of food during this time you were holding off the Germans?
There was no food. We just had to help ourselves we could find in the Dutch houses. All the Dutch gave us, we had no food. The food got dropped in the German lines. We could see them coming down. We didn't know then, but we do know, of course, that there was no radio communication whatever between our unit and HQ in London. Not a single message got through. So by pre-arranged plan, they docked everything to the German lines. That's the area where we were supposed to be. And the Germans loved it. They had a feast day after feast day with the food, which was better than theirs, dropping right into their lap. And we couldn't understand what was going on. We weren't dejected, we were just puzzled. We saw there was going to be a change one day, and the containers would come down in our lines. But it was just enough. I don't think it was marvellous. We lived mostly on candies and fruit and preserves. We just had stacks of preserves, you know, raspberries, gooseberries, and so on. And that was our food really for most of the time. Somebody found a rabbit one day, and so we had a feast one evening. We cooked a rabbit. But they were all these paratroopers. Nobody wanted to kill it. They had to draw for it, to kill the rabbit. Because all the Germans were around us. Nobody wanted to kill that rabbit. So I had to do it in the end.
So were you suffering from diarrhea with this kind of diet?
No.
What about water?
There was water, yeah. There was water.
How far away were the Germans?
Well, the nearest German, but 100 yards away. Every time we moved, they fired at us. And some of the Germans didn't even know where we were. I mean, one day I saw a German come along in the street with his briefcase under his arm, unarmed. With another one behind him, both unarmed, as if they were going to the office at 9 o'clock in the morning. They didn't know that we were there even. We shot them. They didn't have any weapons, whatever. So on the German side, it was very patchy.
Were any prisoners taken on either side?
Oh yes, we took prisoners. I didn't take any prisoners in my lot. But I think the company, we took some on the first day straight away. When we, I don't mean on the dropping zone, but it was the odd Germans were picked up here and there. And you couldn't get much out of them. Of course, every time they took, there were 12 of us who were Germans, incidentally, German Jews in the unit. So we're spread out. And every time they found a German, they said, oh, where are you? Come here, we've got a German. Ask him. Well, what can you ask him? They didn't know anything. They knew as much as we did, really. And as far as I'm concerned, the Germans who were taken prisoners were either set free or to jump ahead a little bit. When we did get away in the end, we marched down to the river. I was marching next to one of our blokes and was wearing a German tin hat, a German Stahlhelm tin hat. So I said to him, why you bring this tin hat home? And he said, was? So I looked at him and said to him, are you German? He said, yes. I said, what are you doing in this column here? He said, I had enough of the war, thank you. I want to be a prisoner. So he got evacuated on the boat. He could have stayed behind, but he had enough of the war. Mind you, it was very dark. We talked about that later on. But I was actually amazed that German wanted to become a prisoner rather than stay in Holland.
Did any of the prisoners whom you cross-examined give anything away apart from their name, rank and number?
We did get a little bit out of one of them. After all, I happened to be the only one around in that. I mean, we couldn't move around after the 5th or 6th day. We only moved from one house to the next at night. Yes, there was one. We didn't torture anyone. But some were either very young or very old. They weren't first-class material. Some were 17, 18-year-olds, and some were in their 50s. And those in their 50s had enough of the war anyway, didn't want to be in another war. So it was their second war, you see. And what they did know wasn't important anyway. They told us where they came from, what units they belonged to. They'd been sent into the line. They didn't have plans on them, they weren't officers. I think a few German officers were caught, but that was a different end of the area altogether. I have no recollection of speaking to any important Germans.
Do you recollect what units they came from?
Not now. I did know at the time. They did tell us, and I passed it on to our intelligence straight away, on the telephone, yeah.
Were all the prisoners Germans or
German.
any foreigners?
German.
None of the conscripted nationalities?
I never saw any.
So, I interrupted your narrative with your group attempting to hold off the Germans for all those days. What happened next?
So we're talking about the area, part of the village on the south side, nearest to the river, which was the area looked after, held by the 21 company. We stayed there until we were told to leave for God knows how many days. I mean, the whole operation lasted, I think, 8 or 9 days. I can't be sure now. But the major part of Arnhem was really spent holding particular streets. And number 2 platoon held 4 or 5 houses in that area. And we were told one night that we were going to pull out, and then we pulled out. About 10 o'clock at night, somebody came along and said in half an hour we're going to move down to the river, and we're going to get out because it's the end. Until then, we thought we'd just go on and on and on. We didn't really think that we have to retreat. We felt we were doing well on our particular front. I mean, after we hadn't given an inch away, the 21 company held those houses all the time. So it kind of great surprise, perhaps tinge of relief that we could get out.
Had you been sleeping during this period?
Oh yes, we took it in turns. We took it in turns to sleep. I worked out certain shifts in my house. So many people were on duty and so many people on the upstairs windows. And whilst we were in the house, the Dutch were still in the cellar, at a painter's shop, painting material. Lots of pots and pans and brushes all over the place. And we did sleep, yes, we did. We eat. I mean, the Dutch were very good. They had provisions in the cellar, and they shared it all with us. And we established a very good relationship with this Dutch family. On the other hand, we did lose people here and there. You heard people coming back from other ends of the village, that so-and-so had been shot, somebody blown to pieces, somebody is wounded. So one by one, the truth sort of came over that we got fewer and fewer in numbers. But it didn't seem to matter to us. We felt we'd get through somehow. We'd always be somebody else. I was blown up once. It didn't hurt me very much. As a shell landed nearby, just lifted up into the air. And I came down, concussed for about a minute or two. And I got up, and that was all.
You were unscathed?
And what?
Unscathed?
Yes, absolutely. On the other hand, it was terrible to hear of people, our own mates, being killed off. And just the memory afterwards, it can't be true. So the years afterwards, we went back to the cemetery, and we saw all the graves, and it suddenly dawned on us, yes, and we of course remembered them then as they were many years ago.
So when you had to withdraw, were you and the others in an exhausted condition?
I wouldn't say that. We were certainly very tired because sleep wasn't possible all the time. We didn't have much food. Probably lost a lot of weight, But I don't think very exhausted. Tired.
You said that when you were at the DZ, people thought it was more or less like a lark. What was the morale like by this time?
Surprise. After all, the Germans kept on sending their loudspeaker vans across. The Germans are very good at it. They had loudspeaker vans touring the area, especially the middle part, which I mentioned to you when we were in the forest, telling us that Montgomery had abandoned us, and the best thing, if you want to see our wives and sweethearts again, and our families and mothers, give yourself up now, and at least you have a chance, otherwise you'll be obliterated. But I won't tell you what language we used.
Was that shouted back at them?
Yeah, we shouted back at them, but not necessarily as polite as that. And then suddenly one day a piper appeared from nowhere in the middle of the battle. It seemed like World War I, I don't know. He must have been from the Cosbys. Part of the airborne troop was the Cosbys had a company, or possibly even the battalion of the air landing troops. And like all the sort of hoo-ha's going on there, he suddenly appeared with his pipes and walked up and down over the parapet. It was really like a film. And he disappeared again. I'm sure he was real.
Were the Germans shooting at him?
Yes. But he was quite unconcerned.
Did you see him again?
No. The Cosbys suffered terrible casualties. I can't quite remember. We had the Cosbys, the air landing people had the Cosbys, they had the South Staffordshire Regiment, and an Irish unit, Northern Irish unit. The parachute regiment by itself provides airborne provides parachutists, but the air landing brigades have ordinary infantry, which is plucked out of the reservoir of infantry. So we had the Cosbys on our left for quite some time, and the South Staffordshires on the other side. It was a miniature First World War battle, except it only lasted 7 days. The question who had more ammunition. Machine guns suddenly stopped firing because they had no ammunition. You were told about it. Can we borrow something? No, we haven't got enough ourselves. There was very little coming through. In the end, we had to be very careful what we fired at for fear of exhausting our ammunition. There was plenty of Sten gun ammunition, but it wasn't very accurate at more than 50 yards. It's only psychological.
How close a contact were you able to maintain with the South Staffordshires and the KOSP?
Well, they were at phase 2. They were on our right and our left, respectively, in the wood. We knew they were there, and I didn't get as far as that because we had fixed positions. We dug in the forest, and we had to hold that position at all costs. We went down one day to only a few hundred yards in front of the wire fence in order to do a little patrol job. And just as we got to the house, within 100 yards, suddenly the Germans opened up on us. We hadn't seen them before, with a machine gun. And it was so drastic, so unexpected, that all I could do is to jump into a foxhole, which was dug by somebody else the previous night. And I was really scared, because it was quite unexpected. I had a Sten gun, I think, full stop, nothing else. The Sten gun is a short weapon, fortunately. And as I thought to myself what's going to happen next, I heard a bang 12 inches away, and I had to send one of those German grenades with a handle, strange handle on them, a wooden handle. I forgot what they're called. We have ordinary percussion grenades. The Germans had them on a wooden sort of handle.
Stick grenades.
Stick grenades, that's it. And one went off. It was 12 inches. I looked afterwards, I could see the spot where it exploded, and another one on the other side of the foxhole. So I thought, well, the end has come. Dear me. And suddenly it was quiet.